All right, let's talk about the British royal family. Every time there's a big royal event, the same question always comes up, right? How much are these people actually costing us? Today, we're going to find out the true cost.
So, let's just dive right in. For a lot of people, the whole idea of a monarchy in this day and age just seems, well, like a ridiculously expensive relic. You see the castles, the crowns, all the pageantry, and you can't help but think it's a huge drain on the taxpayer. But is that really the full picture? We are going to follow the money and the history to see what's what.
So, where do we even begin? Well, we have to start with a big number, the one that gets everyone fired up. Let's follow the money.
And here it is, £40 million. That's the headline figure you always hear. It's the amount of tax money that goes to the royal family every year. And, on the surface, that sounds like an absolutely enormous amount of cash. But if you actually break that down, it works out to about 65 pence per person per year. I mean, that's less than a chocolate bar. Still, you're probably thinking, hey, that's 65p of my money. Why should they get it? And that's a fair question.
Well, as with most things that have been around for centuries, it is a little more complicated than that. The reason the royals get a single penny of tax money actually goes back to this incredible deal that was made a long time ago.
And to really get our heads around that deal, we need to hop in a time machine and travel all the way back to the 18th century to meet a king you've probably heard of.
Meet King George III. Yep, that King George, the one who famously lost the American colonies. Back in 1760, he had a pretty serious problem. He was broke. He owned all this land, vast amounts of it, but the profits just weren't cutting it. He couldn't cover his royal expenses. So he went to Parliament with a radical proposal. You guys take all the profits from my lands, and in return, just give me a fixed annual salary. And Parliament? They said yes.
And here's a totally wild, kind of weird side note about King George. Historians think he had a genetic disease called porphyria. Now, one of the very strange side effects of this condition is that it can apparently turn your waist, a rather majestic shade of purple. So there's a little historical fact you can't unknow.
Okay, back to the money. So Parliament made a bet. They took King George's deal, figuring those land profits would be a good investment. The big question is, after more than 250 years, how did that bet actually pay off for the United Kingdom? And the answer is pretty staggering. You see that £40 million cost? It is absolutely dwarfed by the money those same lands now generate for the government. We're talking £200 million every single year.
So let's be crystal clear about this. You take the $200 million in revenue, you subtract the $40 million they cost, and the United Kingdom actually walks away with a net profit of £160 million annually, all because of that deal.
So let's bring that right back down to you. That 65p that it costs you, it gets completely wiped out by the £2.60 in profit that's generated on your behalf. So believe it or not, because of the monarchy's land deal, your taxes are actually cheaper than they would be otherwise.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. The light bulb's gone off, right? Great, so why don't we just get rid of the royal family and keep the whole $200 million for ourselves? It seems like the logical next step, doesn't it?
But there's one tiny critical detail. It's still their land. See, King George only surrendered the profits, not the ownership, and every single monarch since then has voluntarily chosen to renew that deal. If the government ever stopped paying them, the royals could, in theory, just take back control of their lands, keep all the revenue, and the UK taxpayer would be out £160 million.
But honestly, that huge direct profit isn't even the whole story, not by a long shot. Now we've got to talk about the indirect money, the tourism, which you could argue is even bigger. Millions of tourists, especially from America, pour into the UK every year. Why? There are castles all over Europe. What makes the UK so special is that it has real monarchs in real castles. It's living, breathing history. That royal crest on a guard's uniform, it's not a historical reenactment, it's the real deal. It's this royal fairy dust that makes everything more magical and helps rake in an estimated £7 billion in tourist money every year.
So, the financial case is, well, surprisingly solid. But what about the other huge concern? The whole idea of having an unelected hereditary ruler in a modern democracy. The fear comes from the old school off with their head days when kings and queens had absolute power. But the reality today, it couldn't be more different. The monarch's political power has been described as being like a declawed kitten. It's almost entirely for show. In fact, when the monarch approves a law from Parliament, it's basically a form of kabuki theater. It's this highly stylized, elaborate performance where everyone already knows the ending. The monarch's job is just to give the final stamp of approval on what the elected government has already decided.
So, if you got rid of the royal family tomorrow, almost nothing would change in how the country is actually governed. What you'd really lose is the brand. You'd go from being the United Kingdom to the United Republic of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. It just doesn't have the same magic, does it?
So, let's boil it all down one last time. The myth is that the royals are a £40 million drain on taxpayers. The reality is that an old deal means their lands generate $200 million for the government. The result? A net profit of £160 million for the UK, and that's before you even start to count all that tourism money.
So when you look at the hard numbers, the monarchy isn't a cost at all. It's a profitable enterprise for the country. But that leaves us with one final, much deeper question. It may not cost you money, but in today's world, is the very idea of a hereditary head of state a price you're willing to pay? And that's something the numbers just can't answer.